To kind of go over the plot for these three books. The first book deals with the mercenary band that is exiled from the city that they previously worked at and were held in high regards because of poor leadership. And the next people they get hired from are kind of like the bad guys. And so it's a mercenary group. They're not supposed to care about right and wrong. They're just supposed to work for who they get paid for. But the first story centers on the kind of like the moral conflict between we're really good at what we do. In other words, we're a mercenary band that's specialized, but you know we're working for the evil guys. Can we deal with this and maintain the life? Because you know with evil guys usually your loyal characters are expendable. And there are a lot of cases where they get stuck in bad positions with their own kind of overlords looking over them, where they're not necessarily guaranteed life. So it makes a good kind of suspension in the book. The second book kind of sweeps you away from the battle of good and evil in the first book, puts you in the northern reaches of a territory where they don't necessarily know what's going on. But Shopkeeper is one of the kind of the main characters' center-rounds, and he gets caught in a money-making scheme that ends up leading to the decimation of said mercenary group. And the way this kind of all ties in is fairly interesting. With the conflict resolution in the second book means that the mercenary band is basically forced to switch sides from the bad guys to the good guys. Alright, so that's the plot giveaway for the second book. And the third book, it kind of centers several years down the lane, where like their decimated band, the mercenary band, is a little bit more gone to seed, and you kind of learn the history of why you're all there. In other words, the mercenary band is caught in a kind of a wizard's war between good and evil, and kind of a prophesized recoming good guy, a reoccurring good hero. And the nature of the evil regime that had been and the evil regime that has now taken its place, which really is not as evil as, you know, said previous evil regime. And what's interesting is that the main character, who is Croker, is the physician and historian to the mercenary group. So in addition to his role as a soldier, he basically chronicles the lives of the people that lives in the mercenary brand, so that they can have a kind of a sense of immortality and purpose, basically. Because again, if you're not working for right and wrong, you're working for the money. You know, how do you immortalize your heroes within the group? And the main character is not a very complex man. Croker's not necessarily very complex. Those are kind of left for like Soul Catcher and Raven and other of the kind of characters that remain mysterious within the book. And really what the book ends up becoming is a way to examine the people who were ruling over like this mercenary band and like the lady and the Soul Catcher and things like that. And you get to see them kind of in their own motivations of, you know, why do they do the things they do, and why are they fighting this war, and why do they want to regain control? It's never really answered, but it is a very interesting question that the way they deal with this in this book that I thought was very pleasing. Now there's one reason that I would probably not suggest this book. Like, in other words, you might have a problem with this book, that you would not enjoy reading it. And it's in the style of the writing, especially in the first 100 pages of the book, where a lot of the sentences in the prose are squat and disjointed. It doesn't make any sense. I struggled with it myself. I'm going to go ahead and read a passage rather than make an example. My example would be like, the men stood on a hill, we had our swords, we had our shields, we charged, there was an upcry, battle ensued, you know, things like that. Let's see if I can find it. Bookmark, where are you? Okay. We had arrested most of the more conservative blue leadership. When word of the raid spread, the volatile types decided to flex their muscles. They sparked something monstrous. The perpetual abrasive weather does things to men's reason. The Biero mob is savage. Riots occurred almost without provocation. When things go bad, the dead numbered in the thousands. This was one of the worst of times. The army is half the problem. A parade of weak short-term syndicates let discipline lapse. The troops are beyond control now. Generally, though, they will act against rioters. They see riot suppression as a license to loot. The worst happened. Several cohorts of the fort barricades demanded a special donation before they respond to the directive to restore order. The syndicate refused to pay the cohort's mutiny. So this is not really kind of a flowing prose that you'd get in most other fantasy books, and it's very noticeable when you first read it. And it didn't make any sense to me until you realize the character in the POV is written from Croker's point of view, and he is chronicling, literally like chronicling what happened in the history. So it reads kind of like a military report because it kind of is a military report. It's not a flowing novel prose. Now later on in the books this smooths out, and I think that there was a pretty good balance between narrative, description, and dialogue. I didn't really have a problem with that, even in the first books, where it's still kind of very jointed and disjointed and squat. But this could be a definite turn-off in style if you can't make it over that hump. So that's pretty much it. I'll see what I have written down later and maybe add to like the sidebar. I guess it'd be on this side, I'm not really sure. And so thank you for watching.